November 27th, 1899, Volume 3, Grace Renders the Soul Happy. This morning, my dear Jesus was not coming. After many hardships, I saw him for just a little, and lamenting to him because of his delay, I said to him, "Blessed Lord, how come so late? Have you perhaps forgotten that I cannot be without you? Or have I perhaps lost your grace that you do not come?" And he, interrupting my plaintive speaking, told me, "My daughter, do you know what my grace does? My grace renders the souls of the blessed happy, and it renders the pilgrim souls happy, with this difference alone, that the blessed take bliss and delight in it, while the pilgrim souls work and make it circulate. So one who possesses grace holds paradise within herself, because grace is nothing other than to possess me. And since I alone am the enchanting object that enchants the whole of paradise and forms all the contentments of the blessed, the soul, by possessing grace, possesses her paradise wherever she is." November 27th, 1913, Volume 11. With complete acts in the divine will, the soul forms within herself a son similar to the divine Son. In the divine will, the soul becomes a god of the earth. My always adorable Jesus continues to speak about his most holy will. "My daughter, as many complete acts of my will as the creature does, so many parts of me does she take into herself. And the more she takes of my will, the more light she acquires, forming the sun within herself. Since this sun is formed by the light which she takes from my will, the rays of this sun are linked with the rays of my divine Son. So each one is reflected into the other, and they dart through one another. And as they do this, the sun that my will has formed in the soul becomes larger and larger. And I, Jesus, we remain always here in your will. It seems that you have nothing else to say." And Jesus, "My will is the highest point which can exist, both in heaven and on earth. When the soul reaches it, she has conquered everything, and she has done everything. She has nothing left to do other than dwell in these heights, enjoy them, and understand more and more my will, which is not yet thoroughly understood, either in heaven or upon earth. You have plenty of time to spend there, since you have understood very little, and much remains for you to understand. My will is so great that whoever does it can call herself a god of the earth. Just as my will forms the beatitude of heaven, these gods who do my will form the beatitude of the earth, and of those who are close to them. There is not a good which exists on earth which is not to be attributed to these gods of my will, either as a direct or as indirect cause. Everything is because of them. Just as there is no happiness in heaven which does not come from me, there is no existing good on earth which does not come from them. November 27th, 1917, Volume 12. The sanctity of living in the divine will is exempt from personal interest and waste of time. I continue in order to obey. It seems that my always lovable Jesus wants to speak about the living in his most holy will. It seems that when he speaks about his most holy will, he forgets everything and makes one forget about everything. The soul finds nothing other than the necessity, no other good than to live in his holy volition. So after I wrote about his will on November 20th, my sweet Jesus, being disappointed with me, told me, "My daughter, you did not say everything. I want you to neglect to write nothing when I speak to you about my will, not even the most tiny things, because all of them will serve for the good of posterity. In all sanctities there have always been saints who first started each kind of sanctity. So there was the saint who started the sanctity of the penitent, another who started the sanctity of obedience, another of humility, and so with all the other sanctities. Now I want you to be the beginning of the sanctity of living in my will. My daughter, all other sanctities are not exempt from waste of time and from personal interest, as for example, a soul who lives attentive to obedience in everything. There is much waste of time. Her saying and re-saying continuously distracts her from me, and she mistakes the virtue for me. If she does not have the opportunity to take all the orders, she lives restless. Another one suffers from temptations. Oh, how much waste of time! She never tires of telling of all her trials, and she mistakes the virtue for me. And many times these sanctities end up in ruin, but the sanctity of living in my will is exempt from personal interest and waste of time. There is no danger that they might mistake the virtue for me, because I myself am the living in my will. This was the sanctity of my humanity on earth, and therefore it did everything for everyone, without a shadow of personal interest. Self-interest takes away the mark of divine sanctity. Therefore it can never be a sun. At the most, as beautiful as it may be, it can be a star. This is why I want the sanctity of living in my will. In these times so sad, this generation needs these suns, which may warm it, illuminate it, and fecundate it. The disinterest of these terrestrial angels, all for the good of others, without a shadow of their own self, will open in the hearts the way to receive my grace. And then, churches are few, and many will be destroyed. Many times I do not find priests to consecrate me. Other times they allow unworthy souls to receive me, and worthy souls not to receive me. Other souls are unable to receive me. Therefore, my love finds itself hindered. This is why I want to make the sanctity of living in my will. In it I will no longer need priests to be consecrated, nor churches, tabernacles, or hosts. These souls will be everything altogether: priests, churches, tabernacles, and hosts. My love will be more free. Any time I want to consecrate myself, I will be able to do it, in every moment, during the day, at night, in any place where they might be. Oh, how my love will have its complete outpouring. Ah, my daughter, the present generation deserve to be destroyed completely, and if I will allow a little something to be left of it, it is to form these sons of the sanctity of living in my will, who through my example will repay me for all that other creatures, past, present, and future, owed me. Then will the earth give me true glory, and my fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven will have its completion and fulfillment. November 27th, 1924, Volume 17. On the immutability of God and the mutability of creatures. The cause of this mutability is the will of man. I was thinking about the immutability of God and the mutability of creatures. What difference? Now, while I was thinking of this, my always benign Jesus moved in my interior, saying to me, "My daughter, look, there is not one point in which my being is not present. I have no place to oscillate, either to the right or to the left or behind. There is not one void which is not filled with me. Not finding one point in which I am not present, my firmness feels unshakable. This is my eternal immutability. This immense immutability renders me immutable in pleasures. What I like today, I like always. Immutable in loving, immutable in ruling, in wanting. Once I have loved, enjoyed, wanted something, There is no danger that I may ever change. In order to change, I would have to restrict my immensity, which I cannot do, nor do I want to. My immutability is the most beautiful halo, which crowns my head, extends under my feet, and pays eternal homage to my immutable sanctity. Tell me, is there perhaps one point in which you do not find me? As he was saying this divine immutability made itself present before my mind. But who can say what I understood? I fear I may say nonsense, so I move forward. In speaking then about the mutability of the creature, he expressed himself in this way. Poor creature, how tiny is her little place, and as tiny as it is, her place is not even stable and fixed. Today she is at one point, tomorrow she is thrown to another. This is also the reason for which today she loves. She is like one person, one object, one place. Tomorrow she changes and maybe even despises what yesterday she liked and loved. But do you know what renders the poor human creature mutable? Her human will renders her fickle in love, in pleasures, in the good she does. The human will is like an impetuous wind, which moves the creature at every blow, like an empty reed, now to the right, now to the left. This is why, in creating her, I wanted her to live of my will, so that, arresting this impetuous wind of the human will, it might render her firm in good, stable in love, holy in working. I wanted to let her live in the immense territory of my immutability. But the creature was not content. She wanted her little place, and so became the amusement of herself, of others, and of her own passions. This is why I pray. I supplicate the creature to take this will of mine, to make it her own, that she may return into that immutable will from which she came, and so that she may no longer be fickle, but stable and firm. I have not changed. I wait for her. I long for her. I want her always in my will. November 27th, 1926, Volume 20. How one who fulfills a mission can be called mother, and in order to be called daughter, one must be generated in it. How the other sanctities are light, while the sanctity of the divine will is sun. How the foundation of this sanctity is the humanity of our Lord. I was all abandoned in the arms of the adorable will, and I prayed my sweet Jesus to make use of an act of his power, so that the supreme volition might invest the human generations, and binding them to itself, it might form its first children, so longed for by it. And my highest good, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, when one has a special mission, this person is called mother or father. Whoever originates from this fulfilled mission can be called daughter of this mother. True mother means to carry the birth from oneself within one's womb, to form it with one's own blood, to bear pains, sacrifices, and if needed, to expose one's own life in order to give life to the birth from one's womb. And when this birth has matured in one's womb and has come out to the light, then with justice, by right and with reason, this birth is called son, and she who generated him, mother. Therefore, in order to be mother, it is necessary to first form all the members in one's own interior, to generate them in one's own blood, and the acts of these children must be generated from the very heart of their mother. Now, my daughter, in order to be daughter of my will, you have been generated in it. In it you have been formed, and in forming you, the light, the love of my will, more than blood, has grafted in you its ways, its attitude, its operating, making you embrace everyone and everything. This is so true that, you being a birth from it, it calls you now newborn of my will, now its little daughter. Now only one who has been generated by it can generate the children of my will. Therefore you will be the mother of the generation of its children. And I, my Jesus, what are you saying? I am not good at being a daughter. How can I be mother? And Jesus, yet from you must come the generation of these children. What mother has suffered so much? Who has been confined in a bed for 40 years and more for the love of forming a birth from herself and of giving birth to the generation of her children? No one. What mother, as good as she might be, has sacrificed her whole entire existence to the point of enclosing within herself the thoughts, the heartbeats, the works, so that everything might be reordered in the birth that she carried, wanting to give life to it, not once, but as many times, for as many acts as her child does? No one. Do you yourself not feel within yourself the generations of these children by following their thoughts, words, works, steps, to reorder them all in my will? Do you not feel yourself wanting to give life to each one, as long as they know my will and be regenerated in it? Everything that you do in your interior, and that you suffer, is nothing other than the formation and the maturation of this birth, all of heaven. This is why I have told you many times, your mission is great. There is no one who can equal it, and highest attention is needed. Then I was feeling oppressed, because it had been written to me that Reverend Father de Francia was having the memories of my childhood printed, as well as everything that follows. And in my sorrow I was saying to my beloved Jesus, my love, look a bit at what they are doing to me, for making known what you have told me about the virtues and about your adorable will. They are now putting what regards myself. At the most they should be doing this after my death, not now. Only for me there was this confusion and this highest sorrow. For the others, no. Ah, Jesus, give me the strength to do your holy will also in this. And Jesus, clasping me in his arms to give me strength, all goodness, told me, my daughter, do not afflict yourself so much. You must know that the other sanctities are small lights that are formed in the soul, and these lights are subject to growing, to decreasing, and even to becoming extinguished. Therefore it is not right to put it in print while one is still living in time, before the light is no longer subject to becoming extinguished by passing on to the next life. What impression would one make if it became known that this light no longer exists? On the other hand, the sanctity of living in my will is not light, but sun. Therefore it is not subject either to becoming poor in light or to becoming extinguished. Who can ever touch the sun? Who can take a single drop of light away from it? No one. Who can extinguish one atom of its heat? Who can make it descend even by 1,000th below its place, from the height at which it reigns and dominates the whole earth? No one. If there were not the sun of my supreme Fiat, I would not have allowed them to be printed. But rather, I hasten because the good that a sun can do cannot be done by a light. In fact, the good of a light is too limited, and neither is it a great good if it is displayed, nor great harm if it is not permitted to rise. On the other hand, the good of the sun embraces everything. It does good to all, and not letting it rise as early as possible is a great harm. And it is a great good to let it rise even one day earlier, Who can tell of the good that a sunny day can produce? Much more so with the Son of my eternal will. So the greater the delay, the more sunny days are taken away from creatures, and the more days are taken away from the sun, constraining its rays within our celestial fatherland. But in spite of all the sayings of Jesus, my oppression continued, and my poor mind was made gloomy by the thought that my poor, insignificant existence, that deserved to be buried without anyone noticing that I had been on earth, was to be placed under the eyes and in the hands of who knows how many. My God, what sorrow! But while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus made himself seen in my interior, lying flat, as if his holy humanity were acting as foundation in my poor and little soul. And resuming his speaking, he said to me, "My daughter, do not become distracted. Don't you see that the foundation of the kingdom of the eternal Fiat in you is formed by my steps, by my works, by my heart palpitating with love for the honor of my will, by my ardent sighs, and by the burning tears of my eyes? All of my life lies within you to form the foundation. Therefore it is not befitting that your little work over this foundation, so solid and so holy, be done with distraction, or that your rounds in the supreme volition be done as shaded. No, my daughter, I do not want this in you. Do not fear. You will remain buried in the sun of my will. Who, more than it, will be able to eclipse you in such a way that no one may notice you? The Son of the Supreme Fiat will have great care, so that, as the little lamp of your soul is surrounded by its rays, the sun may appear in it, while keeping the lamp hidden within itself. Therefore, remain at peace, if you want to make your Jesus content. Abandon everything in me, and I will take care of everything." November 27th, 1927, Volume 23. One who lets herself be dominated by the divine will, by virtue of it, receives the divine fecundity within herself, and can generate in others the good that she contains. What is necessary in order to obtain the kingdom of the divine will? First, to move God. Second, to possess the divine will as one's life. My abandonment in the divine volition is continuous, and even though many times it hides my beloved Jesus from me, my life, my all, and eclipses him, it never hides. Its light is permanent in me, and it seems to me that even if it wanted to hide, it could not, because its light, being everywhere, it does not find the point in which to hide, to restrict itself, because it is immense by its own nature. It invests everything. It has primacy over everything, with such empire that I feel it in each fiber of my heart. It flows within my breathing, in everything, and I think to myself that the divine volition loves me more than Jesus himself, because very often he leaves me, while his adorable will never leaves me. Even more, by its own nature, it finds itself in condition of not being able to leave me, and with its empire of light, it dominates me, and triumphant, expects its primacy in all my acts. O divine will, how admirable you are! Your light lets nothing escape it, and caressing and playing with my littleness, you make yourself the conqueror of my little atom, and you delight in dissolving it within the immensity of your endless light. But while I was feeling all immersed in its light, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, one who lets herself be dominated by my divine will, by virtue of it, receives the divine fecundity, and with this fecundity she can generate in others what she possesses. With this divine fecundity, the soul forms the most beautiful and long generation that will bring her the glory, the cortege, of having many births generated in her very acts. She will see, coming out from within herself, the generation of the children of light, of happiness, of divine sanctity. Oh, how beautiful, holy, and pure is the fecundity of the seed of my divine volition. It is light and generates light. It is holy and generates holiness. It is strong and generates strength. It possesses all goods and generates peace, joy, and happiness. If you knew what good the fecund seed of this volition so holy will bring to you and then to all, as it knows how to generate and can generate in every instant all the goods it possesses. This is how the height of the sovereign queen was able to generate the eternal word with no one's work. In fact, by not giving life to her human will, she only gave life to the divine will, and by this she acquired the fullness of the seed of the divine fecundity, and was able to generate him whom heaven and earth could not contain. And not only could she generate him within herself, in her maternal womb, but she could generate him in all creatures. How noble and long is the generation of the children of the celestial queen! She generated everyone in that divine fiat that can do anything and encloses everything. So my divine will raises the creature and renders her sharer in the fecundity of the celestial paternity. What power! How many sublime mysteries does it not possess! Then I continued my acts in the divine fiat, and I offered everything in order to obtain its kingdom upon earth. I wanted to invest the whole creation, animate all created things with my voice, so that all of them might say together with me, "Fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. Hurry, hurry, let your kingdom come." But while doing this, I thought to myself, how can this kingdom so holy come upon earth? In creatures there is no change. No one occupies himself with it. Sin and passions abound. How then can this kingdom ever come upon earth? And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, what is most necessary in order to obtain a good so great, which is the kingdom of my divine fiat, is to move God to decide to give my divine will reigning in the midst of creatures. When God moves and decides, he overcomes and conquers everything, even evils themselves. The other necessary thing is that the creature who seeks it and prays God to give such a great good must possess within herself the life of the kingdom that she asks for the other creatures. One who possesses it knows the importance of it, and will not spare sacrifices in order to impetrate for others the good that she possesses. She knows the secrets, the ways she must follow. She will make herself importunate in order to conquer God himself. She will be like sun, that keeps all the fullness of its light restricted within itself, and unable to contain it within itself, feels the need to spread it outside, to give light to all and do good to all, so as to render them happy of its own happiness. One who possesses a good possesses the virtue of asking for it and of giving it. The same happened in redemption. Sin was flooding the earth. The very people called the people of God was the smallest people, and if it seemed that it occupied itself with it, it was in a superficial way. In fact, they did not possess within themselves the life of that Redeemer whom they were asking for. It can be said that they occupied themselves just like today. The Church, consecrated people, and religious, occupy themselves by reciting the Our Father, but the fullness of the life of my will that they ask for in the Our Father is not in them. Therefore their petition ends up in words, but not in facts. But when the Queen of Heaven came, who possessed the fullness of the divine life, everything she asked for the good of all the peoples, moved God, conquered him, made him decide, and in spite of the evils that were present, the eternal Word came upon earth by means of she who already possessed him, as he formed the whole of her life. With the fullness of this divine life, she was able to move God, and so came the good of redemption. What all others together were not able to obtain, she obtained. The sovereign Queen who had conquered first within herself, her Creator, and the fullness of all the goods that she was asking for others. And being the conqueror, she had the virtue of being able to impetrate and give the good that she possessed. There is great difference, my daughter, between one who asks and possesses, and one who asks and does not possess the divine life. The first one asks by right. The second does it as alms, and one who asks as alms is given money, lira at the most, but not entire kingdoms. On the other hand, one who asks by right possesses. She is already the owner, the queen, and one who is queen can be given the kingdom. And because she is queen, she has her divine empire before God to be able to impetrate the kingdom for creatures. So it will happen for the kingdom of my will. Therefore I so much recommend to you, be attentive. Let it form the fullness of its life in you. In this way you will be able to move God, and when God moves, no one can resist him. November 27th, 1932, Volume 31. The human will is like paper on which the divine image is coined, and God places on it the numerical value that he wants. Example: God enclosed in the act of the creature. I am always prey of the divine fiat. My littleness never tires of going around and inside of it, with the certain hope of consuming myself in its light, and with the appetite of penetrating ever more into its knowledges in order to taste new divine tastes, because every additional knowledge is an additional taste that one receives, and it whets the appetite to want to taste others. Oftentimes one feels an insatiable hunger that is never satisfied, and would want to always remain with the mouth open in order to receive this celestial food. So my mind was crowded with so many things that regarded the divine will, that if I wanted to write everything, I do not know where I would go to get the paper. Therefore I limit myself for as much as I can. And since some doubt crept into my mind, my celestial teacher, Jesus, visiting his little newborn, told me, "Blessed daughter, one act then has more value when the good that there is inside is known, and however more is known, so much more one acquires, because the creature does that act on the basis of the value that he knows, and our paternal goodness does not know how to deceive or trick anyone. If we make known what is the value in that act, it is because we want to give the value that we manifested. And the certain sign is the knowledge itself, that it already possesses that value by itself. We act like a king who takes a paper that has no value and places there 100, there 1,000, there 1,000,000. The paper is the same quality, the same form, but according to the number, so is the value it possesses. Therefore what gives value to the paper is the number and image of the king, who uses it as money for the kingdom. Now, we do the same thing. The paper is the act of the creature. The knowledge is our divine image, and the value is the number that we place. Therefore, what is the wonder if we say that one single act in our will exceeds in value all the acts together done outside of it by all other creatures? It is our image that coins itself as on paper in the human act, and the value of our knowledge that places the number. Are we not owners who can place the number that we want on the paper of the human volition? If the king is owner of placing the number that he wants on a most vile paper, even more are we, in order to form the money that must flow in our azure fatherland. Beyond this, our will was a gratuitous gift we gave to man. He paid us nothing in order to have it, nor did he have money or sufficient means to pay us, except the most vile paper of his human will, that to his misfortune he didn't even want to lend in order to have our great gift. And then we were his most tender and most loving father, and between father and children accounts are not kept, because one knows that the father must give to the children, and they are obligated by the duty of justice to love and hold in esteem what the father gives them. Here, therefore, the necessity for the knowledges about the divine will, and we make them degree by degree, so that the creature appreciates this gift so great that we want to gratuitously give her. Knowledge generates the appetite, the desire to know more, and the human volition disposes itself little by little to undergo the transformation, the unification of the divine will. And we, without making accounts, nor paying attention to whether she can pay us or not, place our image and an incalculable number of a divine value. And we are content to see our children rich and happy with our same divine happiness and riches. Beyond this, my sweetest Jesus added, "My daughter, you must know that as the creature works in our will, she undergoes the divine fecundity in her act, that forms the divine seed in all of her acts, that circulating in all the soul, forms the divine seed in the thought, in the word, in everything, in such a way that one sees in her little act the sweet enchantment of her Creator, happy to give his life through his lovable presence to the act of the creature. Oh, if all could see the sweet surprise, the unheard-of prodigy the Supreme Being encloses in the brief round of the human act, they would remain so stupefied that the whole prodigy of the universe would be a beautiful nothing compared to this. Therefore there is a great difference between one who operates in my will and one who operates without it. The first one is source from which the font can boast that its water never ends, and that can give water to whoever wants it without ever drying up. The second is a font that does not rise up and is dry. The first is fecund earth, and its meadows are always in bloom. The second is sterile earth, that hardly produces some wild plant. The first has the sun at her disposition, that lets her drink large sips of light, of sweetness, of sanctity, of invincible patience, of heroism, and of sacrifices. The second has the night, that gives sips in order to maintain her passions, to weaken her, and make her lose the sight of heaven. The difference between the one and the other is great. Therefore be attentive and let my divine will consume you and transform you completely into its light. End of November 27th. Fiat.